My name is Ole Bouman. I'm currently director of the Netherlands Architecture Institute in Rotterdam. It's the National Institute for Architecture to promote architecture, to make people, the larger public, more aware of architecture, and also to preserve the best archives of the country in the field of architecture and to provide discourse about it. Before I was editor of Archis magazine and later Volume magazine, and currently I'm still contributing editor of Volume magazine. And I'm also board member of Think, that's the School for Creative Leadership located in Amsterdam. Well, I started architecture as the best possible historical source to write cultural analysis because architecture is about so many things. Some people even say architecture is about everything. It is a great source, but while doing research, historical research, I became more and more entangled in the contemporary practice of architecture, spending many years at the TU Delft and working together with architects on contemporary projects. So rather than studying the historical dimension of architecture as I did in the past, I'm more and more focusing on the questions what can happen with architecture in the future, and in the process what can happen with society through architecture. So I believe in the power of architecture. I think architecture is a very important field, not just to solidify energies and tensions in society, but also a way to change these energies, to change these tensions in the good direction. Right now, this role is under siege. It's being threatened. It's not so obvious anymore that architects can play a role in the bigger changes of society, or can at least claim this role for the discipline. They have lost in many countries almost 50% of their work. Also the process of ridiculing architecture in the fields of general journalism, but also among clients, developers, even politicians in many countries are sometimes degrading architecture as a field that is highly too pretentious, has too many stories, is too theoretical, or too ego-oriented. But on the other hand, I think in the long run, if you think about the major social challenges and you spatialize them, if you think about their spatial dimension, you know, the social cohesion question, geopolitical shifts, the creating of value in the cities, value creation, for instance, public health, food production, and the new ways we deal with energy, all these very big questions do have a spatial dimension and do need insight, do need expertise, and do need vision. So I'm pretty confident that in the long run, whatever happens in terms of the reputation of architecture today, we will need architecture very much. I think innovation, of course, is the talk of the town these days. There is no country that takes itself seriously that is not talking about the need of innovation in the wake of major waves of modernization in many countries, either through migration or either through demographical shifts or either through technological shifts, digitization and so on. There is so much at stake that innovation is more or less the buzzword for policymakers. And the moment that you are following the words of the policymakers in terms of innovation, you can only materialize the dreams of people who are not innovative themselves. I do think that artists, designers, the real creative people do not start with the need of innovation. They just innovate. They just make something that works, or that breaks through something, or that transcends something, that amplifies something, that augments something. That's what they do. I don't think that innovation is something that you can just implement. It is more like the effect of genius, or the effect of intelligence that other people can call very innovative. So don't spend too much time on being innovative, just be it. Well, networking is, I think, a very important factor of success in terms of the net effect of curiosity. Of course, you have networking as something that belongs to the rules of the game in the establishment. Or you have networking that belongs to the specific cultural phase of network society. That's all true. You can observe that in sociological terms, but I think what is really important is to understand that curiosity, the main driver of innovation in a way, will lead you to many places and to meet many people who are equally curious. So for me, networking is the forging of a society, which today is a global society of curious people. Internet as a mean of communication is of course very important and takes over a lot of previous media that we were using to pursue our calls, that we were using to connect to others and also to get information from. So as a new technology, it is important, it's undeniably important. But of course there is also a cultural dimension, a spatial dimension, which is very much interconnecting with the future of architecture. Because the internet more and more is not just a means of communication, it's not just what is in your computer, it's something that you have in your pocket or even in your brain. And since this is like an inexorable force today, the effects on architecture as the discipline that helps us to foster loyalty to our environment, or a discipline that helps us to navigate in life, or a discipline that helps us to orientate to our values. These kind of effects of architecture for many centuries are changing rapidly through the internet. And I'm very curious, and I think it's a very open question still, how the discipline of architecture can incorporate this transformation and also can benefit from it. Because to define it as a threat and to say architecture will fade away and be replaced by a completely aspatial, electronical way of communicating with each other would be a kind of helpless observation. I think architecture has chances, has opportunities to interact with the digital culture of internet. Well, we are here in Venice at the occasion of the Biennale, and that always brings back memories of previous installments. And I remember 4 years ago, here at the Dutch Pavilion, we presented an environment which was all about one single question. What is the faculty of architecture today? And what kind of faculty of architecture, what kind of curriculum in a faculty of architecture should be conceived of? That was due to the big fire of the TU Delft architecture building. So since this was such a dramatic moment, like a watershed, we needed to think about that question. And I think ever since it became more acute, more urgent to redefine the curriculum, because for a long time the curriculum was about creating an identity, a personality as an architect, and to build a portfolio to sustain that identity. And it became crystal clear in the last recent years that that is not enough. Architecture is not about self-expression. It is about solving issues, solving problems, and it's also about giving directions for society. So in terms of becoming more relevant in solving the problems of today, but also in terms of knowing about society and knowing what direction we can take and giving indications in architecture, in our designs, where we can go as a society. Well, I was director, I have been director at the NEI since 2007. And when I took that job, there was of course the big question how to profile the National Institute as a place that inspires the discipline, but also that can cut the message across to the larger audience. And that last question was, I think, the most urgent, because for a long time the NAI was a very well recognized temple for architecture as a discipline, but it was not yet recognized as a place to visit as a citizen, as a person who is engaged with the environment and his immediate surroundings. So what I did the last couple of years was focusing very explicitly on reaching out and making it a more public space, making it a more, let's say, a more urban and civic environment, which was exemplified by a major renovation that was finished last year, where we opened up the building very visibly and directly, and creating a kind of square, a public arena inside of the building. So that was one part. And the second thing that was important to do is to invent a new medium, to do like what a cultural institution should do, to not just to do everything in Rotterdam, like a monument that you all have to go through, but to translate the same spirit and also to translate the resources of the NAI to a very small medium, which is the app that we developed. So we developed an urban augmented reality app where you can walk through many cities in Holland and have the NAI in your pocket, having direct access to the archives and to the major, to the knowledge that we represent. And thirdly, and I think that's also super important in terms of the things that we discussed before, thirdly, we wanted to draft an agenda for the discipline to be just according to the principles that we just discussed. A discipline that is less focused on expressionism and that's more focused on solving issues. A discipline which is less about a kind of minority, let's say the exception to the rule, to a discipline that is more about the rule itself, to change those rules and to show that architecture can play a decisive role in society when it comes to public health or social cohesion or value creation.